Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today, it's a good one. We've been looking forward to this for a long time. It's episode 60, where we are talking Mickey 17. That's right, Bong Joon-ho's latest film, his big blank check movie after his Parasite win way back in 2019. I have been so excited for this movie, even though it was filmed way back in 2022. It's finally out after multiple delays and move arounds and uncertainty with its release, but I am feeling a little bit sick today, so if I sound like I am dying, it's because I sort of am. I woke up and I sounded like I just smoke 40 packs of cigarettes a day, so I got my coffee here, I got my water, I'm ready to go. There's tons of news to get through. Before all that, thank God award season is over. We're going to talk about the Oscars in the What Else I Watched section, but thank you all for the great reception to my YouTube video, my Oscar hopes and predictions. It was a lot of fun to make. You can also check out my Oscar reactions on the social medias. I posted a little video back on Monday, the day after the show, but lots of stuff to get through today. But before we jump into the news, of course, timestamps below. If you don't want any spoilers for Mickey 17, you can just enjoy the non-spoiler section. I will make sure to keep it very much to what appears in the trailer. Before we talk Mickey 17, let's jump into the news. All right, well, our first piece of news made me actually shake my head at my phone. I was in public and I almost shook my head at my phone just so people knew how much I disapproved of this. Variety, Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, Vanity Fair, everyone is confirming David Arquette sets Scream 7 return as Dewey. What are we doing anymore, guys? Like, what does this movie become? I honestly think it might be a final movie as well, where they're maybe like going back and there's de-aging or something like that, or there's ghosts and Dewey comes back, Matthew Lillard comes back, and the other guy, Reggie, the original Ghostface. I think it might be all the ghost faces coming back, except probably Jack Quaid and Mikey Madison. Oh my god, it's so crazy now in 2025 to be saying Mikey Madison was in the Scream movies. I love her in those movies. This is a very odd choice. I think this will be one of the most desperate and sad movies. The amount of potential it had after Scream 6, which I think wasn't as good as Scream 5, but still a lot of fun with like Melissa Barrera, Jenna Ortega, and like our new cast members were just a lot of fun. And they all have very good chemistry, to now just shoehorning in every former character. And we're just going to do 1,000 callbacks and adding people that aren't really that interesting. Like, I don't need Joel McHale in the Scream franchise. And now we're bringing back Dewey, whose death is maybe the most emotional part of any of the Scream movies. When Dewey died, it's this great sacrificial moment that felt so earned, and the whole time you're wondering who is going to die. Is it going to be Courtney Cox? Is it going to be Dewey? And there's so much tension leading to it, and then it's finally Dewey because he gives himself up, and it's an amazing moment in that film that is like a largely very positive movie. So everyone is reporting in Variety, as they see here, it's not yet clear exactly how this is possible, as Dewey was viciously stabbed to death in the fifth film, Scream 2022, by Ghostface, later revealed to be Mikey Madison's Amber Freeman, but he isn't the only miraculous resurrection in the Scream universe. Oh right, sorry, it wasn't in the last one. It was in Scream 5, where they're still in the town, not the New York one. But the New York one is good as well. If you haven't watched the new Scream movies, I'd recommend them. Honestly, the last two have been very good. But he isn't the only miraculous resurrection in the Scream universe. Scott Foley and Matthew Lillard are also set to revive their now deceased characters in Scream 7. So this just makes zero sense. I think it will be a bunch of ghosts coming back and haunting them, because in the last one in New York, they had the main girl being haunted by the spirit. Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, Mason Gooding, Jasmine Savoy Brown are all set to star alongside Scream newcomers McKenna Grace, Celeste O'Connor, Joel McHale, Asa German, and Sam Reckner, Anna Camp, Mark Consuelos, and Ethan Embry. Oh my god, Mark Consuelos that's crazy. I honestly don't know how I feel about this. I love the Scream movies in general. Like, I think it's one of the most fun franchises. Even the bad ones, I'm like, this is still a blast, as dumb as it is. But I think after the last two, which I thought were such a promising new direction you could go in with these new characters, even if the last one, the one in New York, I thought, okay, the spiritual aspect is like a bit of a bummer, but still really promising with these new great up and coming actors that can bring new blood and new life into this franchise. This all just feels like such a step backwards, because one actor got fired for a very valid political opinion calling out genocide. Like, it just all feels like it's been thrown in the gutter, and it's very dirty and feels very money grabbing now. So I've said it a billion times on the podcast. Of course, I'm going to watch this because I'm a huge fan of this franchise, but this almost feels like an in memoriam for the Scream franchise that I'm going to be watching, so it's going to be a bummer. We have seen, worst milking of a franchise, but it looks like Scream is now fully being milked. I do think horror franchises are they the most milked franchise, or what's like the most, we got to keep making these franchise? I mean, Marvel, I guess, is the one, but there's also Star Wars. I think just from one franchise of Scream 7, there's been 7 Scream movies. There's also been 11 Fast and Furious movies. Final Destination, there's been a bunch of those. So I think horror movies always have a lot of sequels. Some action movies like Fast and Furious, it's insane how many Fast and Furious movies they've made. But anyways, I digress. This is a bummer, but I'd love to hear what you guys think. So get in touch with me. Comment under this episode on Spotify. What do you think of the direction that Scream 7 is going in? Or hit me up on the social medias. But let's move into another piece of news. So a few weeks back, we talked about Jesse Armstrong is actually writing an original film for HBO, and the cast was revealed this week, and I have to say, it's a damn good cast. We have Steve Carell, Jason Schwartzman, Rami Youssef, and Corey Michael Smith. You'll recognize a lot of those names. Corey Michael Smith, if you don't know, he was actually in Gotham. I never realized he was on Gotham as the Riddler. He also played Chevy Chase in Saturday Night. He was the best part of that movie in my eyes by a million miles. He blew everyone else out of the water as asshole Chevy Chase. But Rami Youssef, love him. Jason Schwartzman, I'm okay with. I think he's a little bit hit or miss for me. Steve Carell, he's awesome. I think he can do drama, he can do comedy, he can do it all. So the movie follows a group of billionaire friends who get together against the backdrop of a rolling international crisis. It marks Armstrong's first project since the Succession series finale in May 2023. The movie starts filming this month in Park City, Utah, and will debut on HBO this spring. And Variety puts in brackets, yes, you read that right. So they're filming the movie, and it's going to come out in a couple months. That's kind of nuts. I've never heard of a movie filming and coming out a month later. And there's no official release date. I know it's only March, but they said this spring, so that's in the next 4 months. I've never heard of a movie doing that before, where it films, immediately goes and edits it. I mean, are they basically doing a long TV episode? That's just what? That is kind of nuts. That's crazy. That's either an amazing idea, or it's gonna set a bad precedent that movies can be filmed and then released 3 months later in whole. That's kind of psycho, but at the same time, maybe it's just gonna be a cool, more stage play type thing, and they're just minimal editing as possible. But, maybe it might even suck because it's such a short turnaround. It's hard to tell. But let's move into another story, and we're actually gonna do a new segment. Well, not really a segment. We'll just do another check-in thing, which is who's in the Odyssey now? Because this week, Deadline broke that Shogun star Cosmo Jarvis joins Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, filming underway in Morocco. So let's read out the current cast of The Odyssey. We have Tom Holland, Matt Damon, Zendaya, Anne Hathaway, Lupita Nyong'o, Robert Pattinson, Charlize Theron, Jon Bernthal, Benny Safdie, Himesh Patel, Elliot Page, Bill Irwin, Samantha Morton, John Leguizamo, Cosmo Jarvis, Mia Goth, Corey Hawkins, Will Yun Lee, and Jesse Garcia. Jesus Christ, what a cast. And actually, now that it's, Robert Pattinson's doing press for Mickey 17, he confirmed he is in The Odyssey, saying, I can't say what I am, obviously, but he's going to film it soon, and then they're filming the Batman Part 2 at the end of the year, apparently. And he said, I've only heard vague things about the script, but it's a cool story, and he's really excited for it. But he did confirm that they're filming at the end of the year, which is funny because last time he was doing a Batman movie was right off the back of doing a Christopher Nolan movie. So maybe it's, a good sign, and it's the universe saying the Batman Part 2 needed to be delayed. Sometimes you just gotta believe in the universe and be like, this is the right thing to happen. So kind of a crazy cast. And Cosmo Jarvis, I've only seen him in Shogun, and he's amazing in the show as well. If you haven't watched Shogun, I would totally recommend it. If you're into historical stuff, if you're into good dramas, if you're into pirate stuff, if you're into Japan, I guess, there's just so much cool stuff to love about Shogun. It swept the award season for the last year or year and a half. So, it's not like it doesn't have the great recommendations of almost everyone in Hollywood that's been like, yes, award Shogun. It's a great show, and I loved it week to week. If you like Game of Thrones, I think that's probably one of the best recommendations you can get as a Game of Thrones fan. But The Odyssey, filming is underway in Morocco right now before the team heads to Sicily. It's currently set to release for IMAX on July 17th, 2026. Nolan's mega-budgeted latest is an adaptation of Homer's epic poem composed around the 8th century BCE as one of the foundational poetic texts of Western literature, the story follows Odysseus, king of Ithaca, on his dangerous journey home after the Trojan War. The ancient Greek epic illustrates a true hero's journey as the titular figure faces Polyphemus, the Cyclops, Sirens, the nymph Calypso, and the witch goddess Circe in the treacherous oceans that separate him from his island home and his wife Penelope. So it's a classic text. I'm very much looking forward to that. Someday, maybe next year before the Odyssey comes out, we will do a YouTube video ranking all of the Nolan films. I think that could be very fun because there are a couple that I haven't seen. I don't think I've ever seen Memento, or I have and I don't remember it, or I remember it backwards. What's the synopsis of Memento again? I don't know. Maybe I'll watch Memento next week, but I'm looking forward to this. And apparently Robert Downey Jr. was offered a role and he turned it down for Doctor Doom in Avengers, which is just depressing considering last year on his Best Supporting Actor award run or his promotional campaign, and for your consideration, he talked about how much he's done with Marvel and that he really wants to move into these new roles, as thankful as he is for Marvel, and he would sign up for another movie with Christopher Nolan in a heartbeat, and yet he's back getting that bank with Marvel Studios. And I think those movies, like I said in the Captain America episode, I think those Avengers movies are in trouble. And just today, reviews are coming out for The Electric State, the new Russo brothers Netflix movie, which I believe is the most expensive movie of all time. That might be incorrect, but I know it's $320 million. Maybe that's not the most expensive because weren't like Infinity War and Endgame both $500 million each or something? Anyways, The Electric State is getting absolutely shit on. We will talk about it next week probably, or I'll talk about it the week after on the show because it's going to be on Netflix next Friday and I'll definitely watch it even if it's a disaster. I'm curious to see how bad it is. But anyways, the Odyssey cast looking great. Moving into another story from The Hollywood Reporter. So we're kind of in the grieving period of the James Bond franchise, and in fact they even had an in memoriam segment at the Oscars. I liked the songs that they played. I liked the singers that they got. Look, I'm a huge Bond fan. I love Diamonds Are Forever, the Skyfall song, and Live and Let Die. Those are all three great Bond songs. Live and Let Die, in my opinion, is probably the best Bond song, followed by You Know My Name, the Casino Royale one, right? I think those are probably the two best, along with Diamonds Are Forever, Goldfinger, GoldenEye, all really great Bond songs. But the in memoriam segment was kind of hilarious. The Hollywood Reporter put out a really funny article this week called License to Shill Inside Amazon's 007 Takeover, and I just want to read you this one segment from it. So this isn't in the article, but it is being stated that they still want Christopher Nolan to do the next film. But one of the parts of the article that actually had me crying laughing. So allegedly back in December, a month after Broccoli and Wilson picked up the Thalberg at the Governor's Awards, that's when the Wall Street Journal published a piece detailing the chilly state of affairs, which we actually talked about on this podcast, between Amazon and the Broccolis, in which Barbara is quoted as telling friends that Amazon executives were, quote, fucking idiots, end quotes. Not surprisingly, those choice words did not go over well with Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos. He read her quote in the Journal and got on the phone and said, "I don't care what it costs, get rid of her," is how one insider describes what happened, confirming that what Bezos ended up paying for the franchise was close to $1 billion. For that kind of money, Broccoli and Wilson must have decided other people can screw it up all they want. That article also reveals that, as I maybe mentioned when the news first broke that they were losing creative control and giving it to Amazon, this was all because they were trying to do a Moneypenny series at Amazon, and the Broccolis were just like, this is the dumbest idea ever, nobody's gonna watch this, and that's why Jeff Bezos all of a sudden was like, get rid of her. Look, at the end of the day, the Bond movies have always been a mixed bag. Every Bond that has had multiple movies has really good ones and has really bad ones. Like Sean Connery has great Bond movies, and then he has that one that was like sort of contractually obligated that he got to make one more. Roger Moore was a very old James Bond as well. He had some good ones. He had some not so great ones. Pierce Brosnan had a great one with GoldenEye, and then he had a couple of absolute stinkers. Even Daniel Craig, the most recent one, I think even the worst Daniel Craig one is still really good, or like a mid-tier Bond movie, but they were stinker movies in general. They were more generic action movies, and they tried to revolutionize the series by making it a tied universe where the story was more flowing from movie to movie instead of being, separate, just serial stories, I guess, which I don't mind. I guess if you're going to make it a modern franchise, that's what you have to do. Who knows where this is going to go in the future? I do genuinely think, and pardon my language, I think the Bond franchise is fucked. I think it's going to be destroyed by Amazon. I hope that maybe they can treat it with respect and be like, you know what? We won't do any TV shows, but let's be real. It's Amazon. They're going to ruin it. They've already already milked the Rings of Power or whatever, and that has very much divided fans. It's Amazon, their streaming service. They're just going to pump out quote unquote content, and they're not really looking at keeping the prestige of really the only remaining prestige franchise. The Bond franchise is the last one standing before, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, or whatever it may be. Like, it's the last one that hasn't had spin-off shows. So it is disappointing. As a lifelong Bond fan who's watched all 25 movies multiple times, it kind of sucks when some part of your childhood is bought out by a corporation. And like I said last week when the news broke, even a non-Bond fan knows who James Bond is and can probably name one James Bond, because we all know who the actor of James Bond is kind of in our lives, I would say. It sucks, but at the same time, I would say good for Wilson and Broccoli recognizing that they're on a sinking ship and being like, you know what, we've put in our time. The Bond franchise did struggle for a long time and we sort of brought it back with Craig. It's time to get off this sinking ship. But let's talk about the final news story. The Russo brothers talked with Collider this week ahead of the Electric State coming out. They talked all things Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. They gave an estimated runtime on each of the films, with Doomsday clocking in at 2.5 hours and Secret Wars coming in at 3 hours. Dear God, why? We don't need some grand epic trying to tie back to every movie since Endgame. People aren't that attached to the MCU anymore. I kind of just want them to treat them as singular action, adventure, sci-fi, superhero movies. But they also commented on Robert Downey Jr.'s prep for the role as Dr. Doom, which apparently he's very committed to. Quote, he's writing backstory, costume ideas. He just loves really rich, three-dimensional characters, and I think he sees a real opportunity here with the character. I love the idea that they have to publicly say, no, Robert Downey Jr., he's very committed to the role, because I do think a lot of excitement for these movies has kind of been very hit or miss. I think every new thing that comes out about the story is either really great news, wow, this concept art looks really fun, and then you get new plot details, or you get new actor updates of yeah, they're actually going to film it all indoors and it's going to be mostly CGI. Also, Tom Holland's not going to be there most of the time. They're just going to have Spider-Man with a mask on and he'll be ADR. That's great to hear. You love to hear it when no actors are going to be on the same set for a big budget movie. But all right, I think it's time to get into Mickey 17. This is a movie we have been waiting a long time for. Timestamps below. If you don't want any spoilers, just listen to the non-spoiler section. I'll keep it fun. I'll keep it loose. We have a lot to chat about. Spoiler section, we're going to get into major themes and a lot of the nuts and bolts of the film because there's a lot to break down. But let's do it, guys. One of my 5 most anticipated movies of 2025, Mickey 17. Mickey 17. Wow, I cannot believe I'm actually saying this out loud, and we're gonna review it. It's been delayed 3 times. They filmed this in 2022, and it's March 2025. That is an insane amount of delays. Robert Pattinson has had so much rotten luck with delays between Tenet and The Batman Part 2, and Mickey 17, but it's here. Directed by Bong Joon-ho, written by Bong Joon-ho, based on the book Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton, has a budget of $118 million. Google's in a nutshell has it as irreverent, wild, and thrilling. Currently has 80% on Rotten Tomatoes with an 80 audience score, 7.3 on IMDb, 3.8 average on Letterboxd with 4 stars as the mode rating, 74% on Metacritic. The synopsis for Mickey 17: unlikely hero Mickey Barnes finds himself in the extraordinary circumstance of working for an employer who demands the ultimate commitment to the job, to die for a living. The film stars Robert Pattinson as Mickey Barnes, as you all know, my favorite actor of all time, Naomi Ackie as Nasha, Steven Yeun as Timo, Mark Ruffalo as Kenneth Marshall, Toni Collette as Yelfa, Anna Maria Bartolemi as Kai Katz, Daniel Henschel as Preston, Patsy Farron as Dorothy, Steve Park as Zeke, Tim Key as Pigeon Man, Holiday Granger as Red Hair, Michael Monroe as Matthew, Cameron Britton as Arcady, Edward Davis as Alan Minikova, Ian Hanmore as Darius Blank, Lloyd Hutchinson as Underboss, and a bunch of others. It's a really great cast. I cannot emphasize that enough. But Mickey 17, initial thoughts, fun but flawed. I think Mickey 17 will be extremely polarizing given its humor and political messaging. It's also not subtle at all, but I also think a lot of people will be disappointed if they're expecting Parasite 2 or a Parasite movie in general. It gets really messy towards the end of this movie, which we'll talk about, but I still laughed a lot. It was actually a pretty full screening last night. I thought it would just be like me and one other person, but it was a very decent turnout, and it made me think about what it means to be human, what it means to be sentient. It has really great performances. Speaking of which, let's start with the performances. Robert Pattinson as Mickey Barnes, or Mickey 1 to 18. Guys, he's fantastic. People may argue career best. I would say career funniest. I still think Good Time, The Lighthouse, and of course The Batman are probably his career best, with The Batman probably being his best, maybe Good Time. I don't know, even I'm arguing with myself, but he has insane comedy chops. He's hilarious with every line, every fall, every face. There's just so much comedy oozing from him in this film. It's fantastic. It seems like he's having so much fun throughout the movie as well. He just plays this loser that sort of's given up on everything and is just doing it all. Same with Naomi Ackie as Nasha. I think she's wonderful in this. She's funny as hell, but also sort of intimidating. Like, she wears the pants in the relationship in a way. I would have loved a bit more of her, maybe, but she's really great. And I actually think her and Robert Pattinson just have such fantastic chemistry. Her and Mickey 18, Mickey 17, Mickey 16, and so on. Every Mickey, every one of the Mickeys and Mickey Barnes in general and Naomi just have such great chemistry. I loved her in this. It's just everyone in the cast is so phenomenal. Steven Yeun as Timo. You guys know I'm a big Steven Yeun fan from Invincible or Beef or whatever it is. I love him a lot. I think he's a hilarious actor. He's really great in this when he's given time. His story does feel a little bit tacked on and distracting maybe. You could probably cut his character altogether and just have Mickey's journey by himself and it would work just as well. But let's get into who I think will be probably the most polarizing characters. I said this movie's going to be polarizing, and I think the reason is Mark Ruffalo as Kenneth Marshall. I already know some people are going to hate this character, and I've seen a lot of reviews of people saying, oh, I hated Mark Ruffalo, he's terrible in this. I get why you wouldn't like it. I actually loved him. I think he's hilarious. You can't have a Bong Joon-ho film, especially an English film, without some villain wearing bad dentures. Obviously, he's giving it his all to do a bad Trump-adjacent idiot politician that just fails upwards, and I think he's actually just so funny in this. Every scene with Mark Ruffalo as Kenneth Marshall was magic to me, and he was so much fun to watch. I love his bad spray tan, his bad teeth, his greasy hair. It's a lot of fun, and same with Toni Collette as Ylfa, his wife, who's sort of the brains of the operation. They're trying to colonize the ice world Niflheim, but she reminded me of, oh, what's his name? No, not Buster. That's in Arrested Development, but in Veep, Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character, her assistant that's always whispering, that's literally Toni Collette in this movie, and it's so funny. Every scene, I love the two of them. I know people aren't going to like it, but I love them a lot. Then we have the character Kai, played by Anna Maria Bartolome, an interesting character that, like Timo, played by Steven Yeun, I think probably could have had more story or less involvement and maybe could have just been cut altogether. Then we have, other characters like Daniel Henschel as Preston, Patsy Farron as Dorothy, Steve Park as Zeke, Tim Key as Pigeon Man, Cameron Britton as Arcady, all these supporting characters that have a lot smaller roles. They're still a lot of fun to me, and I enjoyed just everyone in this. I think this is probably his best assembled cast, Bong Joon-ho, when it comes to English films. I think Parasite's probably the best cast he has, but I do think Mickey 17 is his best English cast by a mile, and everyone is just phenomenal in this. But most of all, I think what people are going to take away from this movie is Robert Pattinson. And I'm not just saying that as a massive Robert Pattinson fanboy. I think a lot of people, no matter how many story issues you have or plot issues or how much you hate Mark Ruffalo as Kenneth Marshall, I think everyone's going to walk away from this movie saying, damn it, Robert Pattinson was hilarious and a lot of fun. But the story, let's talk about the story. When Bong Joon-ho came to this project, the book wasn't even written yet, Mickey 7. And I do think the story mostly works in my opinion, but it feels like a lot of ideas are being thrown at the wall. To me, this is just a really great comedy, and this is kind of just Bong Joon-ho losing himself. He's not trying to make something that is as mind-boggling or mind-breaking or whatever you want to say, like a Parasite or a Snowpiercer. For me, this is just Bong Joon-ho after Parasite saying, you know what, I want to unwind and make a really fun comedy. And at the end of the day, I think he did just that. It feels like a lot of ideas thrown at the wall, but there could have been a little more focus on certain storylines and character development. But the story of Robert Pattinson as a loser who goes to space, clones himself 18 times is pretty freaking great, and I had so much fun. And the direction from Bong Joon-ho, he does it again. Not his strongest work, but definitely his craziest English film. And I'm actually going to rank his English movies at the end of the non-spoiler section, so look forward to that. It does feel like Bong Joon-ho sort of just ignored any studio notes or just got wrapped up in his own world and he makes every character as wacky as possible, every interaction as weird as possible, and every action scene as goofy as possible. Like, it just felt like he had to turn every dial up to 11. We've spoken on this show about movies where the director just gets to fully lean into their shtick as hard as possible, whether it's Zack Snyder on Rebel Moon, or Nolan with Tenet, or Wes Anderson on Asteroid City. Well, I think this is Bong Joon-ho leaning into his sentimentality as hard as possible. This is him just going nuts and being like, you know what? I got a big fat check to make this movie with Warner Brothers. I'm gonna go fucking ape shit doing it. And he fully does. He just sort of lets loose. A lot of people aren't gonna like it. It's gonna be messy. In my opinion, yeah, it's maybe his messiest movie of any of them that I've seen between the four that I've seen. Three. But in terms of the most fun and inventive one, maybe it's up there. Editing wise, I think the movie needed a major shrink down. Like, I'm talking 10 to 15 minutes of just tightening scenes. However, the editing for the comedy aspects is so great. Not a single joke failed to land for me. There's one moment that actually had me crying laughing that I'm going to talk about, but the editing for comedy is so great. There's so much fun packed into every frame of the movie. You're constantly having little things to pick up on in the background, and actually pacing wise, like with the editing, I think pacing wise it can be a little bit rough in moments. There's at least 30 minutes towards the end that I felt really dragging, but it's never not fun. I was never bored. It's just that it did feel a little bit tacked on. Like I said, with a couple of the characters, that's a lot of the story is, okay, but this is fun. Where are we going with it? Even if what's on screen may not be what we want, it was still very entertaining. Look, I'm gonna have criticisms for this movie. I do want to underscore, and just one big asterisk beside all of this, how much fun I had watching this movie. It's not perfect, but it's so much fun. I do want to talk about a lot of things that I did love about it. Production design. It's a gorgeous film. Just an amazing looking world. I loved the costumes and the designs of our future humans going into space. I watched the Bong Joon-ho and Robert Pattinson breakdown, or like notes on a scene or whatever, with Vanity Fair, and it is interesting how Bong Joon-ho talked about a lot of circular shapes for everything in the film. So whether it's that little dumping thing that they have for the bodies and the garbage on the ship, or the printer for the humans as well, the name I'm blanking on right now, but everything in the story kind of has a circular design to it. Even the animals, the creepers that they run into, also have like a bit of an oval shape to them. So a lot of the production design is really gorgeous, and there was one striking shot to me when Mickey is signing up to be an expendable and him and Timo are trying to get off Earth. There's this one pan up in Pittsburgh when they're leaving to get on the spaceship, and it's just this oval staircase running around the ceiling as a sandstorm is hitting the building. It's really gorgeous. Production design, this is top quality. I think it has potential to be nominated next year for production design, but let's not talk about the Oscars. I'm so fucking sick of award season right now. The score, Jung Jae's score for Mickey 17 is just so great and sad and pathetic, and it just adds into such a fun comedy aspect, like a lot of Bong Joon-ho's films. Specifically, I'm thinking Okja, but at the same time, the Parasite score is so much fun. Actually, in university, I would listen to the Parasite score a lot while studying because I just loved it. I have a Spotify playlist going that's over 3,000 songs, I want to say, and there's an array of scores on there, and Parasite is definitely one of the more played ones on it. But Jung Jae's score for Mickey 17 is really great, very mopey and comedic, and it just works very well. But also, speaking of production design and how the score plays into that, the planet designs and Earth when we see it are really cool. Like I mentioned, there's a sandstorm when they're leaving Pittsburgh, but also it's sort of alluded that instead of trying to reverse the damage that's been done to Earth, and there is clearly climate change that has caused Earth to almost be ruined, billionaires are now trying to colonize other planets and leave Earth. So that's what's been happening here, like Kenneth Marshall. I loved all that. And same with the CGI, is pretty great. I would say maybe it's the best CGI we've had in Bong Joon-ho's English films, at least. Maybe there's a couple moments where it is noticeable that there's two Mickeys on screen and there's a little haze around Robert Pattinson, but I don't think it's bad enough that it took me out of any scene. I still think it all works really well, and it's gorgeously done. The CGI on the creepers is just really great. It's so well done. It's just a very well designed film, and since that first trailer, I'd say, that had Robert Pattinson coming out of the printer, been very interested in the look of this world, using a lot of blue and the like little orange hazes around, and it's just worked really well and factored into the production design from the very start. But let's get into the humor, because this movie's hilarious, jam-packed with jokes. The first first 75 minutes of the movie is just joke after joke after joke, and it's so good. Every joke is just a big swing. The ending, obviously the jokes dry up a bit as we kind of get into this final big battle type thing, so that's understandable, and it has to get a little bit more serious at the end, but the movie is just so funny. Specifically, not just hilarious writing, but the physical comedy from Robert Pattinson is fantastic here. At one point, he throws himself down a staircase in this film, and I had tears streaming down my face. Just holy shit. Whoever the stunt double was, or whether he threw himself, I don't know who it was, but he throws himself down this staircase and is just so funny. But Rob just seems super committed to every Mickey death and the Mickey dopey caricature that he is playing, and it's just so much fun. It feels like he's really losing himself in this role. Everyone in this film, Mark Ruffalo as well, even if you didn't like it, you have to admit that how committed he is to this character, and it all just worked really well for me and made it such an enjoyable time just seeing all these people kind of having fun and losing themselves, and the goofy voices. Robert Pattinson really goes for it with multiple goofy Pittsburgh accents as every Mickey, and Mark Ruffalo as well with his ugly dentures doing a bad Trump maybe. Definitely he's taking like 60% of Trump and adding him into his persona in this film, but I do think there is so much goofy voice work done in this film to be admired. For me, of his English films, well, at least between the comedies, I would say Okja is much more of a comedy. I would say this is his funniest film that he's done, and he's really, just like I said before, losing himself in a big blank check comedy that he was given from Hollywood. So I think Bong Joon-ho earned it after Parasite, and he's having so much fun here. Dialogue-wise, last week in the Watch or Watch Back, if you haven't heard that episode, go back, enjoy it. It's a lot of fun and a lot of fun to listen to before your Mickey 17 episode this week. Dialogue-wise, yes, Bong Joon-ho does speak a lot of English. I looked it up after. He speaks very good English as well. He just prefers to use a translator because he loses a lot of the complexity that he can speak with in Korean when he speaks in English. Dialogue-wise, his best movie by far in English of the three that he's done. We talked about Snowpiercer, a lot of very stiff dialogue, and then in Okja there are a lot of improvements, wherein I would say Mickey 17 and Snowpiercer is night and day, razor sharp. Yes, it does get a little bit exposition heavy when it comes to dialogue in this film, but I think it really works. And we also talked about translations last week, that every film he does in English, there's a translation device of some kind or someone translating. In this film, there's a translation device between the creepers and the humans. I don't think that's a spoiler to say. It's like very minimally used for the most part, and it worked really well. I think he balanced how much you hear the audio for the creepers and it kind of fades away and it cuts in as well, works really well. Also, this movie is 100% English. There's no Korean in this film. For the first time in his English films, he's not having any other human languages. He only has the creeper languages. So very fascinating to see how Bong Joon-ho has evolved as an English storyteller, not just a Korean storyteller. Having watched Snowpiercer, Okja, I loved Parasite, now watching Mickey 17, he's probably up there with one of my favorite directors working at the moment. I just love everything he's doing, and he's so much fun to watch. So whatever he's doing next, I think he's doing a Korean like murder story next, or a drama about detectives or something in Seoul. I will be there on day one, 100%. But speaking of dialogue and translations and the writing, there is narration used in this film, and I've seen some people commenting on that they didn't enjoy the narration. I actually liked it. I think it works well here. It lets Robert Pattinson have a lot of fun, and I don't think it's necessarily hurting the story. Like we talked about the narration in The Monkey a couple weeks ago, how that felt like it was doing a lot of telling and not showing in the film, whereas I think the combination of the narration in this film with what's happening on screen works really well. It's never trying to exposition dump on you. There are moments in this film where characters aren't narrating, but there is exposition dumping a little bit, but I think it still works very well. And it also gives you insight into the themes of the film. Like, I like the discussion on the morality of reprinting and Expendables, and I sort of took it as in some ways, maybe the military-industrial complex, but I think there are other themes. Like, what's the message here? I'm not going to do any spoilers for specifics, but like, what is this movie trying to talk about? I think guilt over loved ones' deaths for sure, and making new versions of ourselves to get away from guilt. Capitalism, of course, it's a Bong Joon-ho film. Exploitation of the middle working class. Religion as a business. Expansion gives opportunities to idiots. Rich people fail upwards, etc., etc. I think there's a lot of that here because it is a Bong Joon-ho film. You know what you're going to get. This is very much a greatest hits, I would say, of Bong Joon-ho. It's sort of a hybrid of Snowpiercer and Okja. I mean that the best way possible. Maybe we're retreading former or old ground or whatever that is, we're retreading ground, whatever the saying is. It's still really great, and there's a lot to be taken away from this. Like, it's fun to just let the actors play, even if the movie doesn't really know when to like pull them back a little bit. There's still a lot of fun to be had in this. It has a messy third act that maybe we'll talk about in spoilers a little bit more, because I don't want to give anything away of where this actually goes. I'll just say the third act does have a lot of little stories that don't all fully get the attention that they need. And for a 2-hour, 17-minute movie, you would think you could develop multiple stories, but it does feel like there's a lot of little things that happen, but a lot of the big stuff maybe could have just used more of the attention, so the big swing is a successful big swing instead of a lot of little swings. I don't know, does that even make sense? But look, overall, Mickey 17 is absolutely hilarious. It's a goddamn blast. I was not at all let down. I was very worried going into this film, like, oh, I've heard Warner Brothers is not excited for this movie coming out at all, and it's had not like the best marketing. I think it's a very good movie. I think it's a lot of fun. It's flawed, but it's still such a great time at the movie theater, especially. I would encourage you to go see it in IMAX too. It's not as perfect as I had hoped, but I'm not at all disappointed. I've already booked a ticket for a second viewing. There's so much to take out of this, especially if you're like a Robert Pattinson fan like I am as well, because he's just having the best time possible on screen. Naomi Ackie, who I'm a huge fan of from Blink Twice, she's also great in this. It's a stellar cast. It's a stellar story. So much fun to be had. I gave it a solid 4 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. Ranking wise, Bong Joon-ho films, I would go for his English movies. Okja in last. I like it a lot, but it's not the best, and it sort of is a little dull in the second act. Then I would go Mickey 17. I think it's very strong, but Snowpiercer is in first because I think it's just such an exhilarating ride that feels very developed, even if it does get a little bit info dumpy at the end. But let's move into spoilers for Mickey 17. All right, spoilers for Mickey 17, you have been warned. So the reason him and Timo go into space in the first place was so funny. They get in deep with a bunch of loan sharks, but I thought it was going to be like, oh, they're drug dealers on Earth or something like that. But it turns out they actually opened a macaroon store and it like flopped. So they had to pay back their debt, obviously. And it was just such a goofy way to take like the classic mafia story of, oh, we're in deep with the loan sharks, but we got to get off Earth and we got to go on the run. But usually it would be like, oh, we're starting our own drug business or whatever it may be, or a casino or something like that, but it's a macaroon store. So I think that just shows the level of jokes that are in every layer of this film. Every aspect of it is hilarious. And every little detail has like a joke somewhere in it. Maybe it's buried, but there's just something funny about every aspect. But at the same time, there's still like very interesting dark elements to this, like why reprinting is actually banned on Earth. It's because, was it the scientist who made it? One of the scientists, sorry, had started reprinting himself and doing serial murders around town to homeless people. He just started killing people and he started using it as a defense, being like, well, I'm here. How could another homeless person? So how could I do it if I'm, in a jail cell? And I just thought it was very interesting, like the morality and how immediately, as soon as humans get new cool technology that, oh, we can clone each other, immediately it's used for evil purposes and some idiot on a science team or someone has to use it for evil reasons. But they did cut out a scene from the book, or a chapter from the book, where Mickey 17, 18 and Nasha have a threesome, and people were very confused or excited, like, oh, are they gonna do that in the movie? And there was a lot of anticipation for that, of like, holy shit, they're gonna make Robert Pattinson have sex with himself. They did cut it out. There is still like a little 3-way love triangle of some kissing going on, but it's like all done very plainly, and it apparently it's a rated R movie. I guess it is, but that would be more just for language than anything else. I don't think there's anything particularly vulgar or gruesome about the film. But let's jump into the themes of this movie, because we've talked about Snowpiercer and like literally the class system, how every train car is moving up in a class or whatever it is, and then we have Okja and sustainability and the lies of sustainability in some ways around the planet and corporate responsibility. But I want to start Mickey 17 talking about colonialism, because there is this idea that like, oh, we're exploring space and it's this grand adventure, and how back home, Kenneth Marshall, he's a failed politician. He lost re-election twice, but now that because he has money and he's exploring the galaxy or whatever and looking at other planets, he's a genius abroad simply because he has money. All of the people on his ship are just disposable to him, and also when they go to Niflheim, whatever the frozen planet is that they're on. And of course, you can read the planet Niflheim as this colonial exploration and him wanting to get rid of all of the creepers, and the locals just don't understand and they want to cause us harm and we can't live in harmony, when in fact they actually saved Mickey at the start of the film. Of course, you can read that all as colonialism. I think that's a very good theme to talk about, but there is just a lot you can pick apart from this film other than like big picture things, even just in the human condition, like guilt. He feels guilty for allegedly killing his mother as a child because he clicked a button in a car while they were driving, when that is not the case. He did not kill his mom. He clicked a button and the car was a piece of crap anyways. And I really loved the mental differences between every Mickey. Mickey 18 is like another version of himself because they are all different mentally. Mickey 18 literally tells him, you are not guilty for mom's death. The car was a piece of shit. It's time to get over it and realize it wasn't your fault. And it's just a really nice way to talk about how we have different aspects of ourselves that are, it's like separate people. I have internalized versions of myself that is like another person where I blame myself for something, and there's another version of myself telling me it's not my fault. I really loved how, of course, there's this grand metaphor of multiple Mickeys representing the working class and the expendable nature of the working class to the rich, but there's also like the human psyche breakdown of different versions of Mickey are just different mental states of ourselves. And maybe every expendable Mickey, as all of them are annoying in some way, maybe every Mickey was like the worst versions of ourselves, how we all have these different versions that we don't like, but they are what make us human, and we need to find ourselves again. And I do want to just read this section of what the IndieWire reviewer, I think it was David Ehrlich that wrote this one, I'm not sure. I love reading IndieWire every week, and they just had a really good breakdown of the theme of Mickey 17. So Mickey's repeated cycle of lab testing, then painful death, then human reprinting become the film's central visual metaphor of dehumanization in this world of exploration fueled by unholy alliance of religion, corporations, and yes, politics. Like colonialism, there was this need to, we need to explore the world and spread Christianity, but it's also bringing in the politics of the day of wanting to dominate other countries and kingdoms, and at the same time, it's also a business plan of, we can get resources from these other countries. And that's what we're seeing right now as well with Israel, Palestine, but even within Russia and Ukraine, like it is a very political and corporate thing of the United States and Trump wanting to work with Russia. But anyways, you get what I'm going towards here. There is a very colonial heavy theme here of uniting the three and just capitalism at its worst with religion, corporations, and yes, politics. They say, separation of church and state, blah, blah, blah. That has never been true. Like there are still so many laws and rules in our worlds that are originated from the Bible or religious texts somehow. And of course, you can look at religious texts and there's lots of things in there that are worth listening to because it's like, yeah, that's a general rule, and to treat your neighbor with respect how you would like to be treated. But we don't need to just say, the Bible came up with that. It's like, no, I think that's just a general human rule. But anyways, Mickey's repeated death, you see him getting dehumanized over and over and over again, and everyone always asks him, Mickey, what's it like to die? And they see him as just this material thing in front of them that's meant to die, instead of asking, are you ever scared to die, or how are you feeling about dying? And they never actually look at him as a human that's experiencing this weird thing, because it is, his consciousness is being transferred person to person, but they only see the outside material thing in front of them instead of the internal spiritual and soul of a person that has been giving himself up every time for these deadly experiments. And it is a lot like, rich businesses that just rip off their employees, treat them like shit. They never ask, how is it going? How are you feeling? Can I help you with anything? Is there anything that could make this better? It's just about, how's the work going? It's about, how is the dying going? What's it like to die? What's your work like? Instead of, how are you feeling? Is there any way we can make your system better for you? And stuff like that. So there's just a lot to unpack here. Maybe it's not his most nuanced film, and I do think a lot of what's in here is kind of what we've already seen, as I said, in non-spoilers, but at the same time, there's a lot of really great new stuff, like Mickey 18's death. I want to talk about that next because I actually really liked it, and it felt earned that even the worst version of Mickey still realizes that, the Mickey before me didn't get to live his life fully, so I'm going to give myself up for the sake of the greater good, and it's my job to die anyways. So when he's killing and Kenneth, I like that they both say, yes, I'm scared, because even the grimiest, most gross dude in the world is scared of death and still human in some way, but so is Mickey, who is the 18th version of this expendable human experiment. He's afraid to die, and like I said, I think it's a really wholesome ending with Mickey getting his life back and feeling human again. Like, yes, my consciousness has been transferred from body to body, but I still have a soul, and I still, I might have been expendable, but I'm still someone that should be treated with respect because I'm doing the most deadly job we have. He's felt like a nobody for 16 versions of himself. Even his original version, he felt like a nobody, and he, like he said at the start of the movie, didn't have a lot going on. So I just loved that rediscovering of love of oneself at the end of the movie. Having said that, the end of the movie in certain aspects that I think are not great or just feel a little underdeveloped or whatever. I want to start with Kai. I feel like she may have been cut out of the movie a little bit. Seems like they're setting a lot with her being the new face of their white supreme race living on Niflheim, and we don't really get a lot from her in the third act of the film. Like, it seems like they're spending a lot of the movie setting up the Nasha versus Kai storyline and her getting in between Mickey and her, but then Kai is just sort of nowhere in the last act. So I feel like she and Nasha had a lot more stuff. They have this feud, and then it's always clear that Kai has a crush on Mickey, but it feels like it sort of just dissolves and doesn't go anywhere. His dream sequence at the end of the film felt like a bit of a hat on a hat, and I felt like Mickey had already sort of realized his personality again, or his like human qualities again, and then we get this random dream where they're reprinting Kenneth by Ylfa, and I guess that is trying to allude that like, oh my god, these scary people can come back again, and he's starting to get paranoid, but he has to shake himself out of it. I get that, but it felt a little bit unnecessary, and I think it would have been a cleaner ending without that reprinting dream, in my opinion. Last thing I want to talk about, Kenneth Marshall. He gets grazed by a bullet on the face. Keep in mind, this movie was filmed in 2022, 3 years ago, and he gets grazed by a bullet, and he uses it as a way to like earn political brownie points. Who does that remind you of? Someone getting grazed by a bullet at a big press conference thing. I thought that was hilarious. I could feel everyone in my theater be like, no way. And it's just very funny, the online reaction of everyone being like, oh my god, they're trying to cater exactly to Trump's presidency in his second term. It's like, they filmed this in 2022. They may have even thought we'd be past the Trump days, but it's almost even more alarming that this film is out now with Trump still in power and everything happening. But look, there is so much richness to the story, even if it's the most unsubtle, on the nose, very upfront, open about its themes from Bong Joon-ho in English at least. I think there's just a lot of good things to think about with guilt and colonialism, and you can see in the story over and over again, not just IndieWire saying that, obviously, everyone, it's very clear to see there is this allegiance of religion, corporations, and politics like we are seeing in real life and oligarchs and stuff like that. There's a lot to absorb in this movie, and I think it is just, yes, very dark subject matter, but it's such a fun movie, and you can learn stuff from it. It has fantastic performances. It's hilarious. I love all the setups of the jokes. There's such great details in every storyline to enjoy, even if it's not all fully coming together in the end at times. Also, if you stayed for the credits, they played Marshall's prayer song that the guy with the camera always plays. Capture this in 32K. That was one of my favorite sayings in the film. But look, Mickey 17 was great. I'm seeing it again the day after this releases, so I'll probably talk about it again next week a little bit and what else I watched. But for now, let me know what you thought of Mickey 17 below, but let's move into what else I watched. All right, what else I watched? Well, we've got 4 movies to talk about, a bunch of TV shows, and 1 book. I'll start with the book. Captain America, Winter Soldier, Volume 1. What a damn good book. Maybe the best comic book or graphic novel that we've read in the comics collection read-through on my social media. Ed Brubaker writes it insanely well. I totally see all the best qualities in the MCU version, but at the same time, I love the story in the books as well. And like I said in my social media video, it's actually the first time that once I finished a book, I immediately went online and tried to buy the rest of it. Love the art style, love the writing, love just every aspect of it. Captain America is so well written. Like, he's just at a point in his career where he's just being more ruthless than ever and just snapping arms, whatever, who cares? Believe it or not, I really like the use of Sharon Carter in the book as well, because there's no Peggy involved, and there's really good flashbacks to World War II where there is no Peggy involved. The use of Red Skull, I wish they could have implemented a lot more of the book into the films, but of course, a lot of the actors that played those characters weren't available. Also, it keeps going after Volume 1 for a long time. Like, apparently, that comic run by Ed Brubaker is just super long, so I'm very excited to continue someday when I buy the rest of them, but that was Captain America Winter Soldier Volume 1. I gave it a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. Let's move into TV shows. All right, let's start with the 97th Academy Awards. I'm not going to talk too long about this because I did have my social media video, so if you want to know my full thoughts, go check that out on the socials, but I will say Conan did not disappoint hosting. I think he chose the right moments to take jabs. He was funny, sentimental, he brought it all, but I think most of all, and what a lot of people will agree with, is that even if he made fun of, say The Brutalists' runtime, he still made it abundantly clear how much he enjoyed the films and how much he respects the craft. We are here to celebrate art, and Conan always makes it very clear how much he loves the movies. As for the winners on the night, no real surprises for me. Sure, Mikey Madison was like an upset, I guess, but at the same time, I think it was a very tight race, like I said in my YouTube video. Same with Best Actor, Adrian Brody, which, Jesus Christ, Adrian Brody gave the worst speech I have ever seen. Dear God, like, he made the Amelia Perez lady that started singing the song at the end seem sane, because he, first of all, spits his gum out and throws it to his girlfriend, who is Harvey Weinstein's ex-wife. Jesus Christ, Adrian Brody is just a mess. But overall, 97th Academy Awards, I was very happy. I think it was maybe a little bit boring that, like, Mikey Madison won and Honora won 5 awards, because I think a lot of people did want, like, oh, it'd be so cool if, Conclave won or if Timothée Chalamet won, but it seems like a lot of the winners were like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. That was probably going to happen, which nothing wrong with that. I'd maybe rather that than like Amelia Perez winning 13 nominations. Very much looking forward to next year, but I am sick of talking about the award season. Let's move into The White Lotus, Season 3, Episode 3. If you don't want any spoilers for White Lotus, go ahead 60 seconds. Okay, the little brother in the rich family, he is absolutely going to come out as non-binary or trans. I think that has to be what's going on. At first, a lot of people were like, oh, is this like an incest storyline? Is he gay? Is he bisexual? Is he discovering his sexuality? I think he's actually discovering his gender, and that's what the tsunami is coming in Parker Posey's dream sequence. And you could see how interested he was at the dinner table when he's like, oh my God, Dad, are those lady boys or whatever? And they all start, snickering about transgender people at the table. But you could see he's actually genuinely excited or curious to ask about it, whereas the older brother, Daxon or whatever his name is, fuck, I hate that guy. But you could see a lot of things unraveling mentally in the little brother, his older brother wanting to beef him up or whatever. It's very interesting. And same with the monk stuff and the sister. I don't know what's going on there, but also, Jesus Christ, the 3 ladies, Michelle Monaghan or whatever her name is, Leslie Bibb and Carrie Coon, they're all the 3 friends. The Trump reveal was just hilarious and perfectly written in my eyes. I cannot wait to see how the rest of the season goes because it is exhilarating. I love White Lotus, but I want to move into Invincible. Season 3, episodes 4 and 5. Dear God, season 3 is amazing. A real return to form. I'm just loving the storylines of how ruthless Mark is and how he saw Omega Man or whatever, the episode where he travels to the future and has to kill him because he's been king for centuries. It's haunting. It's a lot like season 1 where every episode was just kind of depressing and Mark needs to make these superhero decisions that you're like, oh, being a superhero would be so much fun. And then you see the reality of it. It's like, oh, never mind. This shit is sad, man. And speaking of superhero shows that came back, Daredevil, Born Again. I watched the first episode of the new season. I guess it's season 1 because it's a new series. It's okay. I think production-wise, the quality has gone down significantly being a Disney Plus show, but the storyline is like kind of interesting with Kingpin becoming mayor of New York. He apparently mentioned Spider-Man in episode 2, I think, so I'm looking forward to it. Charlie Cox as Daredevil is just amazing. Like, I think that's just such a great casting choice. He nails it. He's still finding ways to make the role change every episode, and I think he just keeps getting better and better as Matt Murdock. So I'm excited to see where it goes from here. I think it has a lot of potential, but let's move on to Survivor, season 48, episode 2. Kevin, no! I'm so happy Kevin went home and not Mary because my girlfriend and I both picked Mary as our winner picks, and we were sweating this week like, uh-oh, it's not looking good for Mary. She's got no vote. She's kind of on the outs, but I think her and Say are going to go on to be adversaries this year, and they might have to work together, but it seems like they truly hate each other and are dysfunctional, but I'm very much looking forward to it. I like this cast a lot. Everyone seems like a lot of fun, and Survivor 48 has just been really great so far. And of course, last night, I thought I wasn't going to watch it before this this episode recorded, but I did end up watching season 2, episode 8 of Severance, Sweet Vitriol. Some people would call this a filler episode with Miss Cobell. I would disagree. It's called character development, guys. She is the one that came up with the whole idea of Severance and the chip in general. Fascinating episode, and to see another Lumen Industries town, and a town that was sort of taken down by Lumen as well. So there's a million other places that they could go with Severance, I think. But anyways, let's move into movies, starting with 12 Angry Men from 1957. Goddamn. So I'm working my way through Variety's top 100 movies of all time, and 12 Angry Men is number 99 on the list after The Graduate. I absolutely loved it. I may actually watch it again this week because I gave it 5 stars on Letterboxd. I love a courtroom or a jury room, especially the deliberation drama. That's just so much fun to me, and this was just a blast. Henry Fonda is amazing, but the whole cast is just so good, and it's so interesting to see how people's biases are just slowly exposed as they start getting on each other's nerves, and they just keep digging in and digging into their inner beliefs until it's exposed by one person of like, oh, I see how this is motivated. So 12 Angry Men, I can't believe I'm recommending a movie that's from 1957, like, oh, have you guys seen this movie? And it's one of the best movies of all time. I'm truly a believer in 12 Angry Men. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Yes, it's an old movie. It's in black and white. You're gonna be okay. Then we move on to a terrible movie. I'm working my way through the DCU before we get to Superman in July. So I watched Suicide Squad from 2016. I have seen this movie once. It was in theaters in 2016. Haven't watched it since, and there's a very good reason, because oh my god, it is one of the worst movies I have seen. Gave it 1 star on Letterboxd. Every piece of dialogue is terrible. I know people say, oh, well, at least Margot Robbie's good in the movie. I disagree. I think everyone is terrible in the movie, and Margot Robbie only gets better as Harley Quinn in her subsequent films. David Ayer, I don't want the Ayer cut. There's no way it can be better. I mean, it's already just the foundations of the cast and everyone involved and the designs. Everything is just terrible about it. Jared Leto's Joker is one of the hardest things to watch in the world. I hated every minute of it. 1 star, as I said. But let's move on to a movie that actually surprised me when I watched it. Last Breath. I saw it in theaters. It's a true story about a team of deep sea divers that have to rescue one of their crew members that's trapped 300 feet below the ocean's surface, and goddamn, it was exhilarating. It's extremely cheesy, but in the best way possible. I kind of loved it. It's very much like a movie you would see produced by the CBC in Canada or the BBC in the UK. It's a lot like that Daisy Ridley swimming movie that we watched last year. What was it called? I can't remember what that's called, like The Tide or whatever. It's a lot like that. It's very cheesy, and it's like the triumph of the human spirit, but it was great. My girlfriend and I, we both saw it. We were very surprised. I gave it 3 stars. It's not perfect. The performances are pretty bad, but the story is just so fantastic, and I think I'm going to watch the documentary of it next week. Then the final film and the final thing we're going to talk about and what else I watched, I finally saw Kinda Pregnant on Netflix, the Amy Schumer film. I won't waste your time. It's absolute dog shit. If you are hovering through Netflix and scrolling and you see Kinda Pregnant and someone in the room says, oh, let's watch that, say no. It's awful. It's a waste of time. It's an hour and 37 minutes, I think. I did not even give like a slight breath out of my nose or even come close to laughing. It's so dumb. It's so pointless and just boring. It's honestly so uncreative as well. I hate Amy Schumer. She is the least funny person on the planet, probably. It's so bad, guys. Honestly, it is the lowest rated movie of 2025 for me so far. It's worse than Flight Risk. That says a lot. The Mel Gibson film is better than Kinda Pregnant with Amy Schumer. I gave it 1 star. It was absolutely awful. Hopefully better things to come next week movie-wise. Although having said that, we had a 5-star movie this week, which is pretty good, and we got to see Mickey 17. But for this week, that's all I got for what else I watched. And in fact, I think that's going to do it for episode 60, Mickey 17. If I seem a little mentally disoriented, I am genuinely by the hour feeling more and more sick, but I still had a lot of fun talking about Mickey 17. There's so much great stuff that you can really get into here. I would love to hear what you guys thought of it, so get in touch with the show. But as always, rate and review us on all of the streaming platforms, wherever you get your great podcasts, like Watcher of All Things, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music,
Music, Acast. We are, of course, an Acast-produced show. Give us 5 stars, share us with a friend, share us on your social media platforms, wherever. Spread the good word that is Watcher of All Things. If you're on the YouTube channel, of course, like, subscribe, comment down below what you thought of Mickey 17, and where does it rank in your Bong Joon-ho English film rankings. Also hit the notification bell so you know when my monthly videos come out, but also when the podcasts drop on YouTube every Monday. You can also email us, watcherofallthings@gmail.com, or follow me on the social media accounts. Instagram and Threads are at Watcher of All Things, and the TikTok account is at watcher.of.all.things. You can follow my personal Letterboxd account. That's KikiJ70, KIKIJ70. We've seen 16 2025 movies. I'm not counting a couple of 2024 releases like Presence or The Brutalist or Better Man, because those are technically from last year, so I'm being a little more vigilant this year. But next week, we have another 2025 film, Novocaine. But that's going to do it for our Mickey 17 episode. Thank you all so much for listening. If you're feeling sick like I am, take care of yourself, take a nap, drink some tea, drink lots of fluids. I appreciate all the love and support, and I will see you in the next one.